And we are live.
Oh, look at that. And here we are. We are truly live.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
okay, well, you go first.
Sure. So, welcome again to Everything is Attitude. We have Rosemary and myself this week. Just get us this week, right, Rosemary? Welcome.
It is what it is. It is.
Exactly.
Although we do have a very exciting guest coming on from a friend of mine from Australia who is a spiritual medium. Uh, and he's going to be on in a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks or something. I can't remember now what we said, but we're trying
Yeah.
to arrange. I sent him a message, but when he comes on, you have to understand it'll be sort of nighttime for us and early morning for him the next day. So that's fun. So that's so anyway. So
So
we've
how often do you get to talk to somebody in the next day,
well,
Rosemary?
we get to talk quite often actually because I'm a late night person. So if he calls me sort of whatever time it is, I can't remember now. Calls me, and we can talk. We can talk for an hour or two on the phone and just get lost in our conversation. But you can't do it too often because that's sort of well, you got to sort out the time zones and everything. Anyway, uh, yes, hello everybody out there, and hi Al, lovely to be on the show once again with my co-host Al Pisano. I'm Rosemary Altea. Everything is attitude. Al, what is the subject today?
So the subject today was based, I think, a little bit off. You want to show everybody your
I am not being rude.
yes. Don't take offense to
Everybody
that.
wants to know I'm not being rude.
The subject today is really about these experiences that we go through, whether we like them or not. Sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Um, and understanding that we will have things happen to us throughout our lives, but also understanding that we can control our attitude to some degree, right? When those things happen, and it was sparked by your finger. If you want to tell everybody a quick story that maybe you didn't see the other show, what happened, and maybe go through your reactions to that um, after the fact,
Well,
immediately, and then
I'm sure because it's been posted all over Facebook and various other places as well. But I can actually, for those of you who weren't on the show, the base of my finger is so swollen up, it's hard. But I will. Can we see it in the camera? Can
move
you?
it to your left a little bit, Good there.
Okay, so that's the sliced all the way through to the bone, and all the way.
Sorry for those of you who are squeamish, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, too bad. Too bad. And all the way around the top, and those spiky things that you see, there are 5 stitches. It's a small area to put 5 stitches in there, but it was cut to the bone, and I've sliced through at least. There are 2 nerves in your fingers. I've learned all of this stuff doing this. See, there's always an upside to everything. So I've learned that each finger contains 2 nerves, and I sliced through one definitely. I'm not sure about the second one. I do have to go and see a hand surgeon because although, I mean, if I do that, you wouldn't really think there was any issue, would you? But I can't do anything more than that. I can't stretch it, and there's no strength in it. It's early days anyway. But it's the weirdest thing is the cut is around the base, but the pain is in the knuckle and in the front of the knuckle and all the way to the side, where if I sort of move it or who knows how, because it happens, I'm not expecting it, and it's like somebody jabbed red hot fine needles into my finger, and apparently that's the damaged nerves, and I'm hoping that eventually they'll heal and we'll see what the hand surgeon has to say eventually. I mean, it's only a finger. I keep saying it's only a finger, but I laugh to myself because I went to the grocery store today driving very carefully with one hand, but I went to the grocery store because I haven't been to the grocery store for a while, and unfortunately, I mean, I have no strength in this hand at all. So unfortunately, I had to at some point ask for help with the shopping cart, and then having someone help me to the car and so on, and walking to the car with this lovely lady who said, "I'll help you, don't you worry." She was really sweet. And I said, she's looking at the thing, because in the daylight it's not nice to see. She said, "Oh, how awful!" She said, "It looks really awful." And I said, "Yes, but it's only a finger." Keep saying that. It's only a finger. I said, "It's not like it's a lung or a kidney." Well, then I started to laugh, because actually, if it were my kidney, I'd be in trouble, because I've only got one. So I started to laugh. This horrible British humour coming out all the time. But of course, I screamed a lot for probably, Samantha tells me it was 20 minutes. I'm sure it was only 5, but anyway, however long it was.
Rosemary, can you backtrack though? The backstory is that your daughter and your darling boy were there visiting you, right? And you were enjoying the whole week with them, right?
We had a fantastic, fabulous week. It was wonderful. My darlings, both of my darlings, were here. And so it was after the Thursday YouTube show that we do. And I'd promised Reese that I would, after lunch, we'd get in the car, he and I, because his mum had to work. I said, we'll have lunch, we'll get in the car and go get ice cream, and then we'll go to the beach. Even if it's only to walk for a while, we'll go and investigate this particular beach. And he was all excited.
Yeah, those who saw the show saw how excited he was, right?
He was excited for the ice cream.
Yes.
Anyway, so we have a great ice cream place here, you see. So it's great. So anyway, so I made him a sandwich, and I said to him, "Would you like some avocado?" Because he loves it, and his mum likes him to have his veggies, his green stuff. And he said yes. So I went into the fridge, and there was a half an avocado in there and a whole one. And I looked at the half of one. Now, had it been for me, I would have eaten it. But it's my darling boy. I thought, no, I'll give him a fresh one, which was the wrong thing to do, because the way I've always taken out avocado pips, which nobody should ever do, this is a warning. I was at the grocery store today, and I looked at the avocados, and I love avocado, and I thought, no, I'm never going to eat another avocado unless somebody else fixes it.
Is doing it, yeah.
Anyway, my way of taking out the avocado stone is get a small sharp knife and sort of jab it into the stone really hard, and then you just pull it out, and it's simple and easy. Except that I jabbed it into the stone, the knife somehow, whatever happened, slipped. So I seriously jabbed into my finger. The knife bounced off the bone and sliced almost all the way around to the bone. When they x-rayed it, they were surprised that actually my finger was still intact. And I do have to tell you that my daughter, she gave me loads of paper towels because the blood gushed and all that stuff. I'm holding the paper towel, I'm screaming for a few minutes, and then I sort of was just pacing and trying to get myself together, which is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
With, sort of trying to, because I'm pretty good in crises. But anyway, so I'm pacing up and down, and Samantha's saying, let me look. And she was absolutely convinced that because there was so much blood, that when I took the paper towel, because a massive paper towel and it was covered in blood, she was convinced that when I took the paper towel away, my finger would drop off. Which it didn't, but it could have. But anyway, once the pain had started to subside a bit, then I kicked in with, every bit of training, centering myself, calming myself, basically getting myself to a place where, I was sort of able to deal with it. And I thought, well, I'm just going to slap some honey on it, because honey's great for infections and for it's a tremendous healing, has tremendous healing properties. So I always keep honey in anyway. So I thought I'd slap some honey on it and just tape it up somewhat and what have you. So I'm thinking of doing this, and I'm saying this to Samantha. She said, no, you're going to go to see a doctor. And I said, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Not realizing actually at that time, you'd think it's being psychic, I would have known. But anyway, there we are. We're going to talk about that as well in a minute, aren't we? And so she called a friend of mine, Mary Lou, and Mary Lou took one look, and they both looked at me and said, you are going to the clinic. So off I went, and sort of a few x-rays and some, some whatever they put in. They couldn't know, I'm sure it's not Novocaine for a finger, it's Novocaine for teeth, isn't it? But whatever it is, they numbed it with and stitched it up, 5 stitches. So that later, then we came back, and then it's not really funny, but I was sort of emptying the dishwasher with one hand because my daughter was still working, and sort of trying to keep Reese occupied, we're doing some colouring. And I'd said to him, I'm still taking you for ice cream, because when you make a child a promise, you have to keep it, don't you, as best you can. And I sort of was emptying the dishwasher, and I banged my finger. My daughter happened to be right behind me, and she scolded me, and she said, I'll do it. Leave that, I'll do it. So I walked away. She bent down to empty the dishwasher and put her back out. So I've got no hand, she's got no back. It was like, at these times you have 2 choices, and this is what we're talking about. You do have 2 choices. Luckily, my daughter has the same weird and wonderful sense of humor that I have. It's a very British weird sense of humor, but I do believe the Brits have the best sense of humor in the world. No disrespect to anybody else, but I think we do. And so we laughed about it, and then my friend called, and she said, oh, you all right? Do you want anything? And I said, you wouldn't like to just take us into town for an ice cream? Into town is 5 minutes away, I might tell you. So I was able to keep my promise to my darling boy. But when I went to the clinic, I felt a bit of a fraud, because I really would have just slapped the honey on and wrapped it up myself if I'd been on my own. I felt a bit of a fraud because there are so many people there. And in fact, I'd been to this same clinic 3 weeks before with my bronchial stuff and having serious bronchial spasms and being really ill. And here I am with a finger. And I kept saying to other people and to the doctor, it's just a finger, it's only my finger. If I'd have lost it, it wouldn't have been the end of the world, would it? I wouldn't have liked to have lost it, but it's only a finger, and there are people out there who are so much more severely ill than I certainly was. Again, when I'm in pain, or if I'm sort of suffering like that, I tend to put myself in a place where I put myself in a bubble or what have you. We're going to do those sorts of things in our online courses. I was just doing the bubble exercise the other day, sort of tweaking it so that I can give it to my students when we start our online courses out. But putting yourself in a bubble and being able to center yourself and being able to place yourself in a place mentally, spiritually, emotionally, in every way, to put yourself in a place where you can raise yourself up beyond what is physically happening to you, so you can deal with it better. So the doctors, the 2 people who did the x-rays and the nurses and so on, if they had the impression that it was not that serious until they saw the x-rays and saw the damage that I'd actually done. Because I try really hard not to get hysterical and to center myself and to, I was probably in that clinic, there were a lot of people in there, and I was probably the healthiest of all of them. So, you have to look and see the best of a thing. If you can, you have to look to see the best of a thing rather than the worst of a thing.
And a couple things. we're not recommending that people put honey on their finger if they slice through it. That's the first thing, right?
That's just me. That's just me. I'm just saying.
We just make sure everybody out there knows that
it's an antibacterial. Honey is good for cuts and abrasions and all sorts of things. Look, well, it's everybody's choice. I'm just saying that's what I do. I would actually recommend everybody do it. But if I'd have done it with this finger, it would have been not a good idea because the finger was too damaged. But anyway, sorry. Yes, you're right. Warning out there, everybody. Do not do what I do. You know how you say that to your kid? Don't do what I do. Do what I say. Don't do what I say.
But there are certain circumstances that, like really tragic circumstances that your reactions, are warranted probably, and can, the loss of a child, or your child's in an accident or whatnot. I think those are probably much more challenging to have that attitude with.
This is only a finger. It was easy.
Right.
And as I've always said to you, Al, it's easy when it's easy.
Exactly. But if you sort of train yourself to be centered in those moments where it's not a tragedy or it's not something really major, even those major events will be easier for you, I think, because like if I could think back with when my father passed away, and at the funeral, I remember really being centered, and I was almost numb to the whole process, but it was because I was just kind of focused on making sure everybody was okay, making sure my kids were okay, my mother, my sisters, and I got to a place, and trust me, I still miss my father dearly, and he meant the world to me. But in that moment, I was able to stay centered. I was able to be there for those that I really knew needed me to be there for them. And I think
we're relying on you to be strong.
Exactly. And I think some of that is instinctive, but some of that is over years and years and years of just realizing that the lesser things are in fact lesser, right? And you do have control of how you handle trauma to yourself or trauma to others. Accidents happen no matter what we do, right? And it's important for us to be able to, like you said, have that poise and the proper demeanor because it makes no sense for anyone to be hysterical. It actually makes the pain worse.
It makes the situation worse.
Yeah. For yourself and those around you, right, Rosemary? Like your grandson was there.
At this point, I think it's interesting to talk about faith. Let's do that just for a minute. I'm sure that everyone who watches, almost everyone anyway, who watches our shows, if you said to them, do you believe in God or a God force, or whatever they consider to be God, or a force for good, do you believe in the light, do you believe there is light, and so on and so forth, I'm sure that probably 99.9% of all the people who listen to us, who make a point of watching our shows, will put up their hand and say, yes, I totally believe. I believe in God, absolutely. I believe in all of this. But it's easy to believe when everything is okay. It's not so easy to believe when things are going wrong or things have gone wrong. When things are okay, it's easy to say, I absolutely believe. But our faith is tested throughout our lives again and again and again. As you know, Al, as we all know, we come across situations where our faith is tested. It's one thing to say, yes, I believe. It's a whole other thing to live that faith. It's easy to have it. It's easy to say that you have it. It's easy to feel that you have it and know that you have it. But when come the critical moments, it's not so easy to live your faith. And I strive very hard to live my faith because, you know, I I spout to everybody else about God, about the God force, about all of the things I believe in. What kind of person would I be if I were not able to live my faith? No matter how, and believe you me, it's not easy. A few years ago, Samantha had a surgery and the surgery went wrong and she bled out. And I got a phone call and it was literally a mad dash to the hospital. She had to have another surgery. I just missed her going into that other surgery and I had to wait in the hospital. And when I was finally allowed to go in, this is hours later, when I was finally allowed to go in and see her, her head was completely bandaged. There were these pipes coming strapped to her mouth so that she could breathe and what have you. I mean, she looked small and frail, and her, you know, you could barely see her face, but she was white. And for 1 second, I felt my knees buckling. Because when you see your child in those situations, and I know there are people listening to this who have seen their child in those situations and their child does not make it through. But when you see that child, it's a choice, or I certainly, it was a choice for me. Do I live my faith and accept that whatever God decides, I'm going to trust that it's the right thing for my child? Or am I going to sit there and pray and plead and beg and all the rest of it? What am I going to do? If I'm living my faith, I'm believing that whatever happens is the right thing for my child. So I sat there with her. I held her hand. I was with her for days. And not one time did I ever say to Grey Eagle, please let her be okay. Not one time did I ever say to God or to the universe, please God, you know, let her be okay or whatever. I felt very strongly in those moments that if I truly had faith, if I truly believed and I truly wanted to live my faith, that I had to literally hand over and put my trust in God, and whatever he decided was going to be the right thing to do. I mean, not many people can do that. Not many people are able to do that. I'm fortunate because I've had all of this evidence and I've had all of these experiences that enable me to do that. But most people do not have the experiences that I've had. Most people do not have that ability to literally put themselves into God's hands and say, okay. Now, the difference here is that although I was willing and able to put myself and my daughter's life in God's hands, I certainly wasn't going to put my daughter's life in the doctor's hands or the nurse's hands. So if you like, my control or my way of dealing with it was to make sure that the nurses and the doctors were doing exactly what they were supposed to do. And I ran that ward in those moments and I sorted out the doctors, and I had to really, really come down really hard on one of the nurses who treated me like I'm nothing, you know. So I said, I want the doctor now, because at some point during one of the visits, my daughter had a relapse. And the nurse was sort of, you know, well, the doctor's somewhere. So find him then, you know. It's like all of a sudden I became a tiger. So I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm not saying don't be active, don't be proactive. But when it came to, you know, trusting the outcome, I had no choice because of who I am and what I do, and because of what I've seen and the experiences I've had. I had no choice but to let go and let God.
So, Rosemary, a lot of times you'll hear folks say,
I've lost you, Al. I don't know why, but I've lost you. I've lost you. I've lost you. Can't hear you. I have lost you. Where's my phone?
Am I back?
There. Oh, there you are. I lost you. You often hear what? I'm sure you were talking away before you realized it. So what?
No, I saw myself drop off. You often hear people say, "Well, why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? What like I was having a bad day to begin with. Why add this to it?" And you hear it a lot, right? Then you hear others say, "Whatever happened, happened, and I can't really do much about it, and let's move on." So if we start to think about a recipe for those who aren't as in tune as yourself, where they sort of had that ability to relax and center themselves, if we start to think about a recipe for those who, because it's a choice, right? It's a choice if you stub your toe, whether to dwell on the fact that you stub your toe or maybe get angry for a second and be like, all right, done deal. If it's broken, I can't do much about it, right? So
I remember a few years ago stubbing my toe on a vacuum cleaner. It was a bad day. Everything was going wrong. And I stubbed my toe on a vacuum cleaner really hard. And I don't curse a great deal. It's not in my nature, but let me tell you, the air was blue for all of about 5 minutes. Then I started laughing to myself. I'm hopping around on one foot. Then I started laughing to myself because I don't use that kind of language, and then all of a sudden I thought, oh well, all right then, and I just let it go. But exactly what you're saying. What recipe would we use? Well, you said, people say, why me? And I have been tempted from time to time to say, why me? But you know what I come back with? The answer I come back with? Why not me? What makes me so special that these things shouldn't happen? Why not me? So one of the recipes is to take a look at yourself when you're saying, why me, poor me, is, well, why not? Why not me? Because I'm nobody, I'm a human being. I'm here to have that experience. So the recipe is to sort of ask yourself, why not me? Why should I be any different from anybody else? And
even if you're psychic, right, Rosemary? Even if you're psychic and you know these things,
even if you're psychic, one of the
you're still having a human experience, even if you're psychic. Yeah.
Yes. One of the things people say to me, a few years ago, it's quite common knowledge. A few years ago, I had a lot of money stolen from me, and of course the newspapers, because it went it was all over the place anyway, and the newspapers had a field day because they were so, well, she was supposed to be psychic. Well, just because I'm psychic doesn't mean that I'm immune to the human experience, and I'm not, and I need these human experiences just like everybody else. And there are certain things that we talked about this, there are certain things that you are meant to experience, and there are certain things that you have to deal with, and it's your attitude and it's the way you deal with things that is the important thing, and that your attitude, the way you deal with something, is the growth that
that's the growth, right, Rosemary? That's the spiritual growth.
I'd like to tell a story.
Rosemary, before you say that, you said, you cut out, you said that's the growth, and you said that's what we're here for. Is that what you said?
Yes. We're here to grow. We're here to learn. And when we strive, and it's so hard for so many people, when we strive for that right attitude, not an easy thing to do by any means, but when we strive for that attitude, in the striving, we are growing. So there is that growth process that is happening. So as Grey Eagle once said to a client of mine, if I were to smooth your path and leave no wrinkles, he said it to me actually, if I were to smooth your path and leave no wrinkles, no boulders, no stones for you to have to climb over, where would your learning be? Where would your growth be? So Grey Eagle is going to warn me of some things, but he's certainly not going to tell me everything, because I have to stub my toe. I have to climb over that boulder. I have to deal with the finger. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we have to deal with these things, because otherwise, where would our learning process be, as Grey Eagle would say? Years ago, I was in Hong Kong, and I met a couple. She actually came to me for a consultation. She and her husband was a policeman in Hong Kong. He was sort of fairly high up in the ranking of the police. This is when England, Great Britain, was still involved in Hong Kong. We had to get out in whatever year it was, 97 or something, I think it was. But anyway, so she came to me for a consultation. She had two children, a boy and a girl. And as she sat in front of me, and I remember her very clearly, and her husband came with her, she asked me if I'd mind if she taped. And it was in those days, the old tape recorder thing, you know. And I said, no, of course not. You know, do what you want. Anyway, her grandmother came through from the spirit world and gave her so many messages and made it known who she was. And, you know, it was a fantastic consultation, actually. You know, so many people came through from the spirit world to sort of to say hello to this lady and her husband. And but there was a point that her grandmother asked me if I would very, very specifically give a message and to not get it wrong. And the message was, and don't remember the exact words, but the message was, in a little while, God will ask of you a great sacrifice. When that time comes and you know what we're talking about, please understand that this was something that was meant to be. It was on tape. The grandmother went on to say that through this great sacrifice, there would be a great deal of pain and heartache, but there would also be an opportunity for learning and growth. Afterwards, after the consultation was over, the woman asked me what did she think her grandmother meant, and I had no idea. And at that time, none of us was meant to know what that sacrifice would be. More than a year later, I was at home in England and the phone rang. It was a Sunday morning. I can remember it as clearly as it's possible to remember. The phone rang and I picked up the phone. I said, hello. And a lady said, is this Rosemary? And I said, yes, who's this? And she just managed to give me her name before she burst into tears. And I remembered her, because how often do you give someone a message? You'll be asked to give a great sacrifice. But it's God's will, she was told, and a few other things as well about giving this sacrifice. And so I recognized her voice, but I remembered her as well. And I said, oh, yes, that's right. You're in Hong Kong. She said, yes, I'm calling from Hong Kong. Can you help me? And she was crying, and I sort of gave her a few minutes to sort of, you know, get herself together. But as I was giving her this few minutes, Grey Eagle drew close to my side. And he reminded me that she was told that she would be asked to give this sacrifice, that God would ask of her a great sacrifice. And she sobbed over the phone, "It's my son." And as she said, "It's my son," I could see him, the boy, first of all, running down an embankment, a river, a small, very small sort of river, stream even. But it was the rainy season in Hong Kong, and this small stream, the banks had collapsed and the water had risen, and the boy had slipped into the river and become lost. The mother is choking out, "It's my son. Can you find him for me?" Because they were searching at this point all the rivers and so on and so forth. But she and I both knew that this was the sacrifice that she'd been told she would have to give. And I watched the boy being taken down the stream and into a river and then to a huge waterfall. And as I watched this boy and I was describing to this lady what I was seeing, I watched him. His body was going down the river and to this enormous waterfall. And as his body went over the waterfall, I saw him flying high up, up, up. And I saw his angels reaching out to him to lift him and to take him home. And I described this, and she confirmed, yes, where they lived, the stream ran into the river which went to this massive waterfall that's in Hong Kong. And I described this, and she sobbed and sobbed, and she said, "I knew. They're still searching for him, but I knew that he was taken from me. I knew he was gone because of what my grandmother said to me. And I knew that this was the sacrifice I'd been asked to, well, I'd been told I would have to give." We talked a lot, and over the next few days she called me every day. And she told me at one point how the only comfort she could get from it all, she would lay in her son's bed and hold on to his teddy bear. And she would play the tape, my tape, her grandmother's voice through me, saying to her, "God will ask of you a great sacrifice." Now, how hard is it to have a good attitude in those moments, right? But because she had this tape and because she was told about this sacrifice prior to it happening, she absolutely knew. She played that tape again and again. She probably played it for years. Again and again, over and over, she heard her grandmother telling her, which told her that this was an inevitability, that it was something that God had foreseen, the angels had foreseen, that her boy was going to be taken from her. She knew that there was absolutely nothing she could have done. And that, having that tape and listening to my voice, her grandmother's voice through me, helped her with her pain and with her grief.
It gave her faith too, right, Rosemary?
Sorry?
It gave her faith too, right?
Well, she had faith, but through that, she was able to live her faith. Through that message and through that knowing, she would lie in his bed. It doesn't mean she didn't feel the grief. Of course she did. It doesn't mean that she, it's like I'm saying to you in the hospital with Samantha. It didn't sort of acknowledging and living my faith and sort of letting God decide doesn't mean that I need to be inactive. And she eventually was not inactive, and she sort of got involved with, you know, other parents who had lost their children. But it was very profound for me, because even as she called me when she said, "Can you find my son?" She wasn't looking for him here on this earth. She was looking to see if I could see if he'd made it over okay. And when I said to her, "I see his angels, they're all around him and they're lifting him," she broke down. But the relief, even though she was crying, sobbing, the relief, and he hadn't at this point been officially pronounced, you know, dead. He hadn't been found yet. But she knew that she could trust me, and she knew that she could trust her grandmother and just knowing that he was safe, that his angels had come for her, was such a relief to her. And it might sound really weird for people listening to this to think, well, how can you, when a child is taken from you, how can you have faith then? And why didn't God stop it then? And on it goes, you know, the whys and the why me, and why did God do that? And you know, as a meaning, well, you should know these things. How come you cut your finger? You should have known about it beforehand. People, you know, I can understand why people ask those things, but come on, you know, there are things that we don't understand. God's way is not necessarily anything that we might understand. That's what faith is. Faith is believing anyway, even when we're confused, even when we're hurt, even when we stub our toe and we're running about like, you know, crazy, even when I slice my finger. Faith is believing and trusting anyway, no matter what is going on. So I think, you know, the big ingredient here is, you know, when people are saying, "Why me?" or when people are striving so hard to have the right attitude, forget the why me. Hold on to your faith and trust. Try if you can to trust. I mean, we said earlier, Al, how many people having cut their finger or whatever. I mean, it was just a stupid little thing, really. But, you know, how many people would be so upset and allow it to ruin the rest of their time? I mean, I had a week with my daughter and my grandson. I couldn't go in the pool with them anymore. Do I say, "Oh, poor me, it's ruined my vacation" and all that? Or do I say, "Okay, let's go for ice cream. Let's make the best of this"?
And what's better for you and those around you, right? I mean, if you are huffing and puffing and are miserable about what happened, and you had every right to be. You were in pain and it was frustrating and all that, right? But what would that have done for you if you had gone that path?
My father was a professional soldier all of his life. If you didn't learn to be tough around him, you couldn't be tough around anybody. But I remember my father once, I think I might have said this before, he came to me one day. I was pining over a boyfriend. I must have been 16 maybe. And my boyfriend had gone away for the week and what have you, and I was pining, and I was in the living room playing the piano and feeling sorry for myself. And so my father came to the door, and my father was certainly not an emotional man by any means, and you know, he was not affectionate. He wasn't, you know, he was a soldier. He was a tough guy. And he came to the door and he said, he sort of, come here. I was sitting at the piano, "Come here." And of course I felt my stomach drop, and because you never knew whether you were going to get a slap across the head or you never knew what was going on, right? And he held out his hand to me, and he said, "Here," he said, "this is for you." And he held, in his hand, he held a large, fairly flat stone, just a plain old stone from the garden, brown. And I looked at it, he said, "This is for you." And he said, "I want you to make your heart like this stone." And he was serious. Now, I know he was trying to protect me. I know he was saying to me in his way, you got to toughen up, otherwise you're going to get hurt. He was in his way. It was probably the most affectionate thing he ever did for me. But I also have to say it was the worst piece of advice he ever gave to me, and I didn't take it. I couldn't. My heart is mush. Soft as soft can be. I can be tough. I can harden my heart when I need to, when situations call for it. But don't ever make your heart like a stone, because it's the worst thing you can do, because what you do is you pen yourself in. You keep yourself in and everybody else out. So, you know, with this attitude, you also have to let people in. You know, hey, look at look at this. You know, I have to share it. But I also have to smile and say, it's only a finger. It's just, you know. And I think that I certainly couldn't do the job I do. I certainly couldn't have talked to that woman in Hong Kong and been able to help her through the grief and the loss. I certainly couldn't have done that if my heart were like a stone. So, you know, but people deal with things in different ways. So the way I change my attitude or work on my attitude is probably different than the way you do. But however you do it, people out there listening, try if you can to find a way to have an attitude that is right for everybody around you, as well as for you too. That was what you were saying, weren't you, Al? Your attitude affects everybody else. You know, I could have made all of us miserable. I could have had my grandson moaning and complaining about a lousy, you know, because we'd only sort of done half the trip at this point. But we took him for ice cream. Did my finger throb? You betcha it did. Could I just want to lie down and rest? Of course I did. I got a 6-year-old. No, I'm not going to do that. And all of you parents and grandparents out there, you know what I'm talking about. And
if you do have kids or grandkids, they'll learn from your response as well, Rosemary, right?
Oh, people don't, you know, kids don't do what you say. They do what you do. Exactly. You can tell a child, you know, is that mine or yours? People, no. You can tell people, you can tell your kids, hey, stop that, or stop arguing. But if you argue all the time, they're not listening to you saying stop arguing. They're watching what you're doing, and they're going to follow you, and they're going to emulate you. So you have to do, you know, positive things. I was talking to Reese the other day, and unfortunately there's one person in his life who doesn't laugh very much and doesn't, you know, sort of has no joy whatsoever. And Reese was asking about this person, and you know, I was saying, well, you know, whatever they do is not important. It's what we do that's important, and we have joy and we have fun and we like to giggle and so on and so forth. And he totally agreed with me. So you have to, you know, you have to show your kids not just by what you say, but certainly more so by what you do. And you know that you've got 3 young ones there.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't take things back either. Like if you react poorly to a situation with not a positive attitude, they remember. And if you do it repeatedly, it becomes part of their fiber in how they're going to react to similar situations, right? If you don't react well, they won't react well. They learn from us. We have a few comments.
Go for it. Let's have.
So we have.
I love the comments. Keep going.
A lot of people said hello. Sharon joked that she said, "Don't listen to the doctor, Rosemary." LOL. You did listen to the doctor, and you are listening to the doctor,
right?
Boy,
I did. I have to say though, the honey is still in the cupboard, and I'm using it just the same anyway.
Everybody can look that up. Honey is an amazing antibacterial.
It's not a cure-all, everybody, but yes.
But it is an amazing natural remedy, right? Therese says, "I have had many situations occur that would be the normal reaction would be one of a negative nature. Sharon says all humans experience pain and suffering to various degrees. How we handle it is a choice, and hopefully we can make more positive choices than negative.
Good for you, Sharon. Good, good, good. We like it.
Therese says, having had many situations occur in my life that most would react in a negative or lower energy way, since facing death a few times in the past few years, I've adopted the attitude of gratitude for everything. Whenever something good, not so good, or other, I always say thank you for this opportunity to learn and grow from this. That's a great
attitude of gratitude, as we say.
Yes, and we actually, oddly enough, the next comment is Jeff, who we heard the attitude of gratitude from.
Hi, darling. How are you?
Jeff's, as those of you who saw the show with Jeff, says, I lost my son in 2003. The gift of knowing our children are still present, even though in a form most of us don't see, is truly a gift and a blessing. I know my soul, my son is okay. Thank you, Jeff. And Jeff, those of you who didn't see Jeff on the show or don't know Jeff, his attitude is pretty incredible.
His attitude is an attitude of gratitude.
It is. It's an attitude of gratitude.
You can go back on these shows and find them. So
yes, and it's Jeff's attitude is intoxicating in a way. Anybody who thinks they've had a bad day can listen to Jeff and see what his attitude is like through a situation that no one would ever wish they went through, right? So Lori says, my mantra through everything has been one word, nevertheless. And Sharon says, what happened?
I really like that.
Yeah, nevertheless, right? And Sharon says, what happens when you throw a stone in a pond? It sends out ripples. One small thing can cause a larger effect. And that's true, one way or another. They're positive.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Something I teach my students. You throw a stone into a pond and we see the ripples on the surface. We see them going out and out and out, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
What we don't see, but is also happening, is as the stone is going down, the ripples below the surface are going out and out and out. One small stone, one small thought has many ripples, many effects. We don't always see what is below the surface, but there are ripples below the surface, and we should always take notice of those and remember those as well. Our attitude, our attitude towards other people, our attitude to ourselves, that causes ripples on a pond. We can see the surface, but we don't see deeper. But what happens is, if we have a right attitude, those ripples go deeper inside of us and affect us, but they also go deeper inside of those around us and affect them too.
And so much of the attitude we're talking about, whether it's cutting your finger or stubbing your toe, it comes down to decisions every day, because the small things are going to happen every day.
Every day, Al.
What's that?
Several times in every day.
Exactly. Well, and that's that helps shape your attitude one way or the other, right? If you allow your frustration to build because you stub your toe, you slip on the way outside, and then you get into an accident, those things pile on top and build on top of each other. In a good way or a bad way, right? So if your attitude is negative, exponentially things are going to start cycling down for you. If your attitude is positive, bad things may still happen and you may still have a rough time, but you'll come and you'll recover from it in a much more positive way, a way of growth.
Plus, not only that, you also will be inspiring, as Jeff does, I think.
Yes.
Be inspiring other people. You'll inspire other people who have gone through similar to you, sometimes worse than you. To my mind, there is no worse thing than the loss of a child. And Jeff knows I've said this to him many times. But to have that attitude of gratitude, to have that attitude of positivity will hopefully inspire so many people to strive. Don't despair if you feel you can't do it and you can't be positive like Jeff or like Al or like me. Don't despair, because every time you try a little bit, throw the stone into the pond, the ripples go out. Every time you try, you become stronger and stronger and better attitude. Practice makes perfect, everybody. So don't despair if you do struggle with that attitude. As long as you keep trying, that's all we can hope for. Do we have any other comments out there?
No, Therese just said we're about at time. She said this has been awesome as usual. Thank you for these broadcasts. Love to you all. And that's just about it.
Okay.
So.
Well, do you want to say any last words? Not very last words.
No,
You know what I mean?
I'm not ready to say last words. So
you know, when I say to people, you know, I wave friends off. You know, if they go in the car, drive safely. Why? What have you seen? It's like, what? No, I don't mean it that way, Al.
And sometimes you just mean drive safely, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hey. Anything else you want to add here?
No, I think that's it. I think another really a great show with you. Always appreciate and have an attitude of gratitude that we can do this together.
We do hope that all of you out there have been inspired by what we've had to say to you. We shall be here again. Will we be here next Friday, or will you be
yes.
Friday?
I think next Friday we're good, right?
Yeah. Okay, next Friday we're good. I'll let you know when my friend Mitchell from Australia will be on. He may even be watching this as we're speaking, although I can't imagine he would, because he would have commented. But please, you know, all of you out there, don't despair if you struggle with your attitude, because that's okay. That's what we do. We struggle. Even those of us who seem not to struggle, trust me, I struggle.
As do I.
Yeah. So and we will be on Thursday. We'll be doing the YouTube channel Thursday morning, 11 o'clock Standard Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Standard Eastern Time. If you want to know more about our classes, you can sign up right now. We're starting them in 2 weeks, I think. So get going if you're interested. Get going, and we'll look forward to talking to you more. We're going to have, you know, live conferences just like this one, but there'll be a learning process, lessons, and all sorts of things we'll be talking about. So that should be fun.
Live interaction too, right?
Live interaction, and then weekly interaction. With mentors and me even, and just imagine you get to talk to me at least once a week. So yes, so if you want to know more about that, email me rosemary@rosemaryantaltea.com or info
at everythingisattitude.com.
Oh gosh, I do try to remember. Info at everythingisattitude.com. That goes straight to Alan. He'll deal with that for you. If you want to be on the show, or you'd like a subject you'd like us to talk about, again, email us info@attitudeseverything.com. I'll just put it up on the screen for us. And in the meantime, thank you all, you darlings, for all of your well wishes, for all of your healing, for all of your blessings, and all the rest of it that you sent to me. I do appreciate it, for my finger. And it is only a finger. And until we see you again, wherever it might be, whether it's on the YouTube channel on Thursday mornings, whether it's next week, next Friday, Everything is Attitude, or whether you decide to join our online classes, wherever it is that we see you again. Until then, please, 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 please have a very, very, and once again, a very blessed